morning to you. Today is Wednesday, the 17th of June, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. And today I'm going to go through the model again of the advisory board operating system, the model that we have in front of you in the screen. Particularly today, I'm going to focus on the growth and capital or predictability, which is on the right-hand side of the model. So, but in this week, if you've been following Monday and yesterday, Tuesday, you realize I'm not talking about the advisory board as what is inside the model. What I'm talking about is the center of the model, the advisory board itself, how to put it together, what you have to look into, and how to make sure that this advisory board, starting with the chair of the advisory board, is the right one for you, right? So it's not about what to do with the board or what to ask, etc. It's about putting the board together. So not many people explain how to do this, and actually it's very blurred, let's put it that way. Many mistakes are, or the often mistake is actually you are looking for star names or very, very flashy careers, people that actually go into the advisory board. And sometimes, if not many times, that is the first mistake. You don't need a big names or a big track record in several industries, because probably they are very busy in doing something else. What you need is somebody, the first thing you need is a chairman or a chairwoman that actually understand what you want to achieve, when you want to achieve it, and how you would like to achieve it. And then from there, understand in the model here in the operating system, what are the first priorities, and based on that, build the team around it, like 3 or 4 people that are experts in these areas. That's why the model exists, because you as a founder, as a business owner, you look into the business as what is coming next. You might have an idea of the future, but usually you are dragged down, I call it the boomerang effect. You're brought back to the decisions, to the questions, to the meetings that should be with somebody else in your team and not with you anymore. But for whichever reason, it's coming back to you. So these kind of things actually are helping you to see where are the deficiencies, if you may, the dependencies, and how to detach you from that and make your team accountable and to achieve the goals that you're looking for. Okay, so let's focus specifically on the right-hand side of the model. Today, we're going to talk about partnerships, revenues, and assets, which is your growth and capital. What makes it predictable when you're forming an advisory board, right? So you're looking to form an advisory board that helps you with these areas in your business. So that tells you something important. Predictability is not only about the financial reports, and many people think that past glories are the future of the company, and unfortunately it is not. Financial reports are pretty much just auditing the past. It doesn't guarantee absolutely anything in the future. It is about the quality of the decisions behind the numbers. This is what starts to make predictable something in your company. So, for example, questions will be like, which partnerships create stable value? And here's a keyword: is stable value. It's not about flashy, heroic activities or sales or deliveries. What stability is what you're looking for now. And then you have a base of stability, and then you can have your heroics on top, but you must have your stability. Which, for other question, would be which revenues lies or which revenue lines are reliable, right? Again, stability, reliability, which assets makes the business stronger, or which decisions are being made with evidence rather than instinct, right? So this is where you need to transfer all your knowledge, your capacities, your expertises, your passion, if you may, to your team. Otherwise, it's still being you all the time. This is what I mentioned, the boomerang effect. It's all coming back to you all the time. So that is where an advisory board can help a lot, but only if its value is measured. And this is a key thing, measurement. Now, let's take a look at 3 problems with these scenarios. Problem number 1 is that the advisory board feels useful but leaves no evidence. So everyone comes out saying that was a good session, That's fine, but what was decided, what was changed, what risk has been spotted, what option was improved, what value did the business get. So having a good brainstorm sounding board session, it doesn't mean much if you don't start to measure what is the value of that advisory board. And remember, we mentioned a few weeks ago in terms of systems, we're going to touch that topic tomorrow. But on a monthly basis, what you measure is traction, activity, what's going on. On quarterly basis, you measure patterns, right? So you start to understand what is going on when you see repetitive things happening, and this is how they call the pattern or the business partner patterns. And this is very important because when you start to measure these things, you start to realize where the things can be improved in the long term. So monthly is pretty much your operational standard procedures, how you document your KPIs, your performances, etc. But on quarterly, you really had to stop there and say what we identified in the past 3 months that were similar, different, better, or worse than the prior 3 months. And that's where you start to understand where the heat map of your organization is going based on very specific areas. The second problem is that growth decisions stay too subjective. Oof, I don't like that word, subjectivity. But you as a founder have the instinct. So that could be subjective, even if the result is very measurable. But the leadership team has experience too, and both matters. But as the business grows, the decisions need to become more defensible. The question is not only do we believe in this anymore, it's also what evidence supports it, right? So it's not just the belief, it's what evidence supports. So that start to get less subjective and more objective and can be measured. Problem number 3 is that the advisory board gets judged too late. And you say, well, what do you mean too late? Because after 6 or 12 months, someone asked whether it was worth the time and the cost. But then nobody has tracked contribution properly. That creates doubt even where the board has been useful, right? So you have to collect this evidence, you have to put it together, and you have to do again on monthly and quarterly to understand how the value have been transferred from the advisors to the company. So in other words, imagine the business is loading up on growth decisions. So new clients, new markets, new partnerships, new cars, new systems, new capital choices. So the advisory board has good discussions around all of them, right? But nobody records the advice properly. Nobody tracks the decision influenced, and nobody checks whether the results improved. So that is like having a dashboard with the screen turned off. So you have the numbers there, but oh yeah, remember that. But actually, let's look at this again and say, where is that? The screen is off. So how we can understand what we've done or where we are now because of X, Y, Z. Now, as a board advisor, what I would propose to consider is the following. Build a simple advisory board impact dashboard from day one. So do not make it complicated. It feels like complication feels like admin, and nobody likes that. And actually, it's difficult to track and maintain. And at the end, it's going to wind out to the point actually it will completely die. So I would propose only 5 things to track from day one. Number 1 is the purpose. What business outcome is the advisory board here to support? Number 2 is contributions. What did the board bring that the internal team did not already have? Interesting one. Contributions. And it's many times advisory boards are saying, oh, we like contribution in terms of capital introductions or connection introduction to grow the business. But you're missing many other things that advisors are bringing here. So I'm not going to discuss this because we covered that yesterday, but bear that in mind. Contribution is not only capital and connections. The third thing is informed decisions. Track which choices were improved by the board's input. The fourth thing is risk surface. What did the advisory board help to business to see earlier in the process of this engagement? And the last thing is outcomes influence. What changed because the advisory board existed, right? So that is very important things to track, very easy to track and document and put in the agenda at the beginning, the end of the middle, whatever is the case, but make sure that you have all that documented all the time. And this is not about pretending the advisory board controls the results, but it is not. The executive team still owns the decisions. The governance board still owns the formal authority where that applies. And the advisory board only sees the things from the outside in. It's a completed set of eyes looking at your business and say, oh, look at this, look at the other. Because even if the executive team, you as the founder, and your if you have a non-executive directors board, you're always looking at things from the same perspective. And this is particularly a team that never or very they have not many changes in personnel in years or months. But the advisory board, the advantage of the advisory board is that you can change people every 6 months or every year. So the views, the perspective, the cognitive diversity start to get evident. And then the people that are actually running the business start to see the value of that, because actually they start to see things in a different way, but with all the knowledge accumulated through the years of doing the business. So the advisory board informs, challenge, and widens the view, if you want it in 3 words. So information, challenges, and widening the view. So why that distinction matters? Because predictability improves when leaders can say, here's the evidence we received, here's what we did with it, and here's the risk we avoided, and here's the outcomes we are tracking. And what is going to do that for you? And let me share you, is that will stop the drifting, because many times it's a drift because everybody goes up and down and nobody have the good handle of the things. So you want to make sure that you receive a good advice, what you've done with it, what risk avoided, and what business outcomes are you tracking, right? So what is your key person, as we spoke yesterday, to allow this to happen with is the chair of the advisory board. This is your key person. This is the first person you have to look into that to avoid that drift. That is why it's so important to start with a very good chair aligned with you as the founder of the company and your non-executive board. A strong chair can use the dashboard to keep meetings focused. Remember the dashboard that we mentioned earlier. If the advisory board exists for growth, the chair keeps bringing the room back to growth. I mean, the advisory board. If it exists for capital readiness, the chair keeps bringing the room back to capital quality. If it exists for change or innovation or transformation, the chair keeps bringing the room back to the change outcome. So it doesn't drift into 300 conversations that actually are not documented anywhere, doesn't produce any value, and it's pretty much a back and forward of ideas with no clear outcomes. The chair have to bring a very clear outcome conversation and stay with it and help you to elaborate that, so you can go back to the executive team and say, this is a good idea, make a decision and go and move forward. So the advisory board operation system model that we have in front of us supports this, because it keeps the advisory board from becoming a general chat. This is a very specific business outcomes and milestones that you can work around with the advisory board. So, for example, today, the focus is predictability, revenue, assets, and partnerships. So if we were having a meeting today, and this is the priority for the company, the conversation will revolve around these. And these are causes or consequences, right? So if there are causes, we are going to discuss all the causes that drive revenue, assets, and partnerships in terms of quality of the revenue, so how diversified it is, and in terms of the weight of the revenue, if you have too much risk, having too many customers with a high volume, low value, or too big customers with a high value, but it's too risky, because if you lose one, then you have a problem. Then you have your assets. You have tangible and intangible assets. So, for example, your intellectual property is properly documented, is monetized, is licensed, etc., etc. So it's another revenue stream, back to revenues. And in terms of partnerships, for example, do you have a good distribution system, resellers, added value resellers, etc., etc.? So your channel, your distribution, it could be physical, could be financial, etc., etc. How they're operating to make sure that your company have the lowest capital impact with the highest revenue, right? So scaling. So that altogether start to build how predictable is your business. So this is a very focused conversation rather than say, okay, we have a marketing issue. I say, hold on a second. The chair would say, hold on a second. So I believe that today's conversation about revenue, assets, and partnership is branding or marketing issue related to these things, which is the causal consequences that impact this. If you can elaborate as a board member about why the marketing issue is impacting revenues, assets, and partnerships, then probably you can park that and bring it to the next meeting where you're going to talk about, for example, branding, people, and partnerships, right? But if it's something that is affecting today's predictability of the business, then you bring it into the mix. And you see how something that have not related to revenue, assets, and partnership can be brought because it's a cause or a consequence of today's topic, which is predictability. And this is just an example. So the advisory board should help make those easier to understand, govern, and act upon, rather than a drift conversation that actually is a sounding board and nobody pays attention and nobody documents anything. So or what you gain working with me is three things: business outcomes, differentiators, and risk reductions. In terms of the outcomes, it's a measurable advisory board, not a vague one. And I just provide an example. For example, in terms of predictability, you know what is there, what is it there to do, the advisory board, how it contributes, and what decisions has shaped. In terms of differentiator, is the advisory board operating system dashboard approach. It connects advisory input to scale, predictability system, and edge. And edge, I mean the transformation, the innovation of your company, how your company is relevant for the future, rather than leaving advice as a disconnected comment. So you get international advisory expertise, faster implementation than hiring a single executive, and lower overhead than a big consulting firm with no talent locked in, as I mentioned, so members can be swapped every 6 months. And that reduce your risk because reduce the value leakage, as they call it. So if you do not measure the advisory board impact, useful advice gets lost. So weak advice survives, and nobody knows what worked. So let's put an action for today that I want to share with you, and it will be very easy to do. And I have a supporting message image here, so you can look into this. You can print it, screenshot it, whatever is the case, bring it to your team, because this is very important. Take your big growth or capital decision and write one question about what is this big growth or capital decision that you're looking for. Now, underneath, right, what will make this decision more predictable, right? Predictability means that you really have to think about it. What will make these things very likely to happen compared to not? So you have to look into resources, revenues, strategies, systems, your people, etc. It seems a simple question, but actually implies a lot of things. Predictability is, in a way or how, a prediction of what will happen and how you're going to achieve that, right? So then write three answers underneath. Better evidence, we mentioned that. Better challenge. So are you sure that this is a growth or capital decision that is going to really need it? And on the last column, the better measurements, how you're going to measure that. And that is your predictability starting point in terms of growth and capital. So let's pause here today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow we move into systems, which is at the bottom of the advisory board operating system model. We will look at the boundary between advisory input and governance authority, because that is a very important distinction between advisory and governance. So let's wrap up. If you lead a company with 50 or more employees or more than 10 million revenue, and you want an advisory board that can show its value clearly, let's have a 30-minute chat so I can understand where you're coming from, where you are today, and where would you like to go, so we can design together an advisory board that brings you 26% revenue increase and 18% more productivity with a faster implementation than hiring one executive, with a lower overhead than a big consulting firm, with no talent locked in, and with swappable members every 6 months. Have a great day, and we'll talk tomorrow. Thank you, and bye-bye.